Welcome to This Week in the Division 2, your only source for all the news, posts, build guides and more. Let's be honest with each other. There are a shit ton of Division 2 YouTube videos released every week, far too many to keep up with them all. So don't, because I'm going to do it for you. In this video I'm going to run through every Division 2 video released this week. In the description below I will leave a link to every video I watch so that it's easy for you to go straight to the ones that interest you. And to make this video as easy as possible to use, here are the timestamps for each section. You can also use the chapters below to jump straight to them. Now, I didn't watch every live stream or let's play video, but technically there are too fucking many of them. But look out for the names of them all at the end of the video. April Fools was a big thing in the Division 2 this year, with new parody exotics like the Beagle Bearer dropping everywhere in the game, and this was picked up by a number of content creators. I have to say, well done to Massive for this. Brutally cruel but highly amusing as well. I guess to soften the blow they also dropped the name knee pads Turmoil, which resulted in many content creators doing the usual whenever new gear drops, prematurely ejaculating and proclaiming a new meta. More on that later, but it's not. This week also saw new cannon fodder introduced to Conflict PvP due to the Conflict XP event. I think my post says it best about Conflict and PvP in general. It's not for everyone for sure, but don't completely discount it until you've given it a fair go. Outside of the official channels, there was an interesting follow-up on the main story from last week, Tencent's investment in Ubisoft. Tom Henderson, who owns Insider Gaming, posted about a letter from minority shareholders in Ubisoft who are demanding a meeting for shareholders to vote on the recent Tencent deal. But what they really want is to strip all of the value out of the company that Tencent are injecting, which surely would signal the end of Ubisoft. Now personally, I don't see this going anywhere. The directors of Ubisoft legally have to act in the best interests of shareholders, and having an independent external party to advise you on this, as Ubisoft did, is normally a good way to do this and avoid any regulatory issues. Finally, we have a leak around the Brooklyn DLC. Pally Hofstein posted about launching the Division 2, Woney, and inadvertently dropped that the DLC and the next season are coming hand in hand, which gives us a release date in June. Rogue Gold, Kamikazevondoom and Tuxedo Bandido covered this, impressively turning a single tweet into 8-minute videos. Before we get into all the videos, a quick aside. YouTube's algorithm is fucking weird. Run the same search twice and you'll get different answers, and I found some videos just didn't appear. The same goes with this video. If you don't subscribe, you might never see any episode of it ever again. In other news, KBD flagged 2 changes to PvP. Firstly, nearby players no longer appear at the top of the social menu in the DZ. Now if you are a rogue, this is a pain in the arse, as you can no longer easily see your innocent victims. But for those victims, it's a great way to avoid those arseholes. The second change is a bit bizarre though, as kills and assists have been swapped in Conflict. Watch this video for more details, but Massive, why? If it ain't broke, well, I guess it probably just broke, so never mind. Private Pancke put out a video on the Division 1. Now, I personally don't think it was a great video, but I'm always happy to see creators from outside of the community covering the game. Hopefully it gets some views and pushes people our way. NothingButSkillz joined the speculation about a DZ or new game mode within the Brooklyn DLC, a few weeks after everyone else though. Nice of you to join us. And finally, DJ Tickle had a look at how the Division 2 plays on Luna, the Amazon cloud streaming service. A bit of a laggy mess right now, but wait, what is that? DJ Tickle bought Skull and Bones? Oh dear, time to move on. Aside from the normal vendor resets, weekly scout mission solutions, which you can get from the normal sources on screen right now, the biggest area of discussion was around the Turmoil knee pads, which started out as a new meta, but ended up the week as a niche item that works in specific builds. And I'm definitely in that camp. Look, it's pretty simple. The talent on these knee pads doesn't add any damage output. It just takes your damage and splits it, applying half to the enemy you are aiming at and half to a random enemy. So you aren't improving your time to kill at all, unlike the Fox's Prayer knee pads with its amplified damage to targets out of cover. Now in easier content this probably doesn't matter, but in heroic and above you are potentially going to get yourself killed. If two rushes charge at you and the damage isn't spread between them both, but rather to another enemy in the area, then taking twice as long to burn down each of them is a bit of a fucking problem. Where the turmoil knee pads are meta is in one-shot builds, something we will see a lot of very shortly. KVD put out a video on the settings this week to use in the game, a week after Rogue Gold did the same thing. Come on chaps, coordinate a bit better and spread these out a bit. Now the Division 2 is a nerd's wet dream, at least if you're looking to min-max your build. And the ultimate min-maxer is iKia, a man who oozes spreadsheet excitement. If you are looking for the data behind striker builds and what is the most optimal build and talent to use, watch his video. Speaking of builds, more build guides are published than any other video type, but which build is good and which is not? What I will try to do each week is give you some insight into how the builds will play, their key features, whether they are old familiar builds doing the rounds again, or something brand new that might be worth trying. Let's start with some old favourites. I say this every week, Strikers, Heartbreaker and Hunter's Fury are great gear sets and pretty much any build with them will be good. Strikers for DPS, Heartbreaker for balanced survivability and DPS, and Hunter's Fury for run and gun builds. Except if you're just slapping the turmoil knee pads onto one of these builds. Because in order to include these knee pads in your build, you need to drop either a chest piece or backpack talent, or something like the Kyo's mask in order to equip it. And that means you'll be dealing less damage overall as a result. Add on the issues already mentioned with single target versus split damage, and I wouldn't recommend any of these builds. The links are there though, if you do want to try them. A shout out to DJ Tickle who put out a true multi-shot build that doesn't use turmoil. Remember Negotiator's Dilemma anyone? What I do recommend checking out are the Exodus Glove builds with Chameleon that are floating around currently. As Jack of all trades reported last week, when triggered the Exodus Gloves take you out of combat, which resets the 45-second duration of the Chameleon's buffs. This significantly increases the uptime of these buffs, making this a big damage increase and worth having a look at. The final striker build uses the new exotic Oxpecker, and I have to wonder why. The talent on Oxpecker is a little bizarre, but can be effective at keeping your shield up when in a firefight. But to use it, you are losing out on talents like Killer, which adds 70% critical hit damage. If you're running strikers, then you aren't trying to face tank enemies, but rather burn them down very quickly. So why reduce your ability to do that? I mentioned before that turmoil is meta with one-shot builds, so it's not surprising that this week we got fucking 11 of them, all of which are roughly the same. One-shot builds work with a high-powered single-shot weapon, so sniper rifles, certain rifles, and certain pistols. The weapon talent determined and the chest talent headhunter, quite often from the named chest piece, chain killer. Simply, these talents and weapons buff the damage to very high levels, letting you kill enemies with one shot, and then determined keeps this going no matter where you hit an enemy. The rest of the build is about stacking headshot damage, with either the hotshot or breaking point gear sets, and the Habsburg and Heroldi brand sets. When using turmoil, rather than the massive damage being halved between enemies, you hit for nearly the same amount as the single target damage to each enemy. What I think is happening is that without turmoil you hit the cap within Headhunter of 1250% of your weapon damage, and the excess over that is just wasted. But this cap is then applied separately to both of the enemies when you are using turmoil, and so the excess damage is no longer wasted. And this gives one-shot builds an enormous uplift in damage output. I wonder if Massive thought about this. Pestilence builds continue to be an old favourite, including the double companion build that was the flavour of the month back when Perfect Companion was added to the game. The same comments as previously applied to these builds using turmoil, but even more so, because the damage to targets out of cover on Fox's Prayer knee pads applies to both the base damage of Pestilence and to the damage of Plague of Outcasts. So you're nerfing yourself twice by using it. There was just one Refactor build this week. I said my piece on them last week, so watch that video. 3 interesting PvP builds this week. It's good to see the healer PvP builds making a little comeback with 2 builds this week. I put one of these out a while ago and they are incredibly effective once you get used to the playstyle. Typically using Bighorn or Capacitor, they let you heal through incoming damage and still put out enough to take enemies down. The other PvP build though is verging on the odd, to be honest. I don't think I've ever seen a build using Perfect Trauma, but then again, I almost never see an ongoing directive build in PvP. Really one for the Dark Zone only, where you can use the NPCs to get the hollow point ammo going. There were 3 builds I considered for my what the fuck is that build of the week. You rarely see the Merciless used anymore, and given the eclectic gear used in this build, you might understand why. Then there was the Lady Death build coupled with the name Mars Visionario, both very imaginative builds. But there was one build guide that stood out to me. I watched it and all I could really think was, what the fuck? Here's a short sample.
今回はテキトルレジェのライオンに集まってからスタートよろしくお願いします。早速のスモーク発動からの2段階案。
Rogue Gold highlighted the small uptick in the Steam player count. Now you have to look at the movement in Steam numbers rather than the absolute, because Division 2 didn't come to Steam until 4 years after its release. So most of the player base are either on consoles or the Ubisoft launcher. So if the Steam player base has grown by this much, the complete player base is likely to have grown by much more, which is great for us all. See you the same time next week.